My boyfriend called his affair emotional overlap, and then blamed me for his betrayal. Full story. I 28F and my boyfriend, 35M, have been dating for about 3 years now. Last week, we were planning a small pool party for his friend's birthday that weekend, and he was weirdly secretive about helping organize it. One night he fell asleep right there on the couch and his laptop was open. I swear, I wasn't even snooping at first, I was honestly just going to close it. That's when I saw an order confirmation for a floating pool bar. The shipping address wasn't ours. At first I thought maybe it was a surprise or something, but the message attached to the order said, "Can't wait to try this with you." My stomach dropped. It wasn't a lipstick stain or a late-night text, it was actually a receipt. I clicked around more than I'm proud to admit. Found messages and pictures. Turns out he's been browsing suppliers on Alibaba, trying to start a side hustle with this lady, and that was how it started, apparently. The business idea turned into something else. The crazy part was how normal he acted the next morning, made coffee, kissed my forehead, and even asked what I wanted for dinner. I confronted him later that night, and he called it emotional overlap. But to me, that was betrayal. Anyone else found out in a way that felt almost absurdly mundane. How did you even begin to process it? I keep replaying that moment. The blue light of the laptop in the dark living room, Derek's soft snoring from the couch, the way my finger hovered over the trackpad like I already knew closing it was going to change everything. I didn't close it. I wish I could tell you I'm the kind of person who would have. But I think some part of me already knew something was wrong, had known for weeks, and that glowing screen was just the universe finally deciding to stop being polite about it. I didn't realize that moment would unravel 3 years of my life, in about 48 hours. Let me back up because I know how this sounds so far. Girl snoops on boyfriend's laptop, finds something suspicious, chaos ensues. But there's a version of this story where I'm the villain, and I've been sitting with that version too. Derek's mother already called me paranoid and controlling. His best friend Marcus told me I violated his privacy. And maybe if I stop here, without telling you everything, you'd agree with them. So let me tell you everything. Derek and I met at a mutual friend's housewarming 3 years ago. He was funny, genuinely funny, not in the performative way some guys are when they're trying to impress you. He made a joke about the host's questionable taste in wall art, and I nearly choked on my wine. We talked for 4 hours that night. He walked me to my car, asked for my number, and texted me before I even got home. I remember thinking, this is what easy feels like. And for a long time, it was. Derek works in logistics, he manages supply chains for a mid-sized manufacturing company, so he's always been comfortable with spreadsheets, supplier contacts, that kind of thing. About a year into our relationship, he started talking about wanting to build something of his own on the side. A passive income stream. He'd watched a few too many YouTube videos about dropshipping and got bit by the entrepreneurship bug. I was supportive. Of course I was. I even helped him draft a basic business plan one Sunday afternoon. We ordered Thai food and spread papers all over the kitchen table, and it felt collaborative and exciting. That's the version of Derek I fell in love with, the one who pulled me into his ideas like I was his partner in everything. The Alibaba browsing, therefore, wasn't new to me. He'd been on that site for over a year, looking at products, comparing prices, messaging suppliers. It was normal. It was part of the routine. Which is exactly why, when I saw his laptop open that night, I didn't immediately think affair. I thought, oh, he's probably found something for the party. The pool party was for his friend Gabe's birthday. Gabe was turning 40, and Derek had appointed himself the unofficial co-organizer alongside Gabe's girlfriend, Claire. That part also seemed normal. Derek and Gabe had been friends since college. Planning a party together made sense. What didn't make sense, what I'd been quietly filing away for weeks without letting myself look at directly, was how cagey Derek had gotten about all of it. He'd take calls in the garage. He'd close browser tabs when I walked by. Once I asked casually what Gabe wanted as a gift and Derek said, "I'm handling it," in a tone that was just slightly too sharp, like I'd asked something intrusive. I let it go. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself Derek was just stressed about work. I have a bad habit of giving people the benefit of the doubt until I physically cannot anymore. So there I was, standing in the living room at 11:30 at night, staring at an order confirmation for a floating pool bar, one of those inflatable island things with cup holders and a little sunshade, and the shipping address was somewhere in Scottsdale. Derek grew up in Scottsdale. His parents still live there. So for about 10 seconds, I convinced myself this was a gift for his dad. His dad likes pools. People send gifts to their parents' addresses sometimes. Then I read the message. "Can't wait to try this with you," winking face. I stood very still for a moment. The kind of stillness that isn't calm, it's the stillness of your body catching up to what your brain already processed. I looked at Derek on the couch. He had one arm thrown over his face, mouth slightly open, completely relaxed. The posture of a man with a clean conscience. I looked back at the screen. The name on the order thread was Natalie, no last name visible. The message was under a long chain of what looked like a regular supplier conversation, product specs, pricing, minimum order quantities. And then somewhere in the middle of it the language changed. It got warmer, more personal. "You always find the best stuff, lol. Honestly, you have better taste than anyone I've worked with. I feel like we just get each other, you know. I'm a researcher. I work in UX, which means I'm professionally trained to follow a thread, to look for patterns in behavior, to understand how people move through information. That skill, it turns out, is extremely unhelpful when you're standing in your dark living room trying not to spiral." I scrolled up, I scrolled down. I found a separate thread, not on Alibaba, but pulled up in another tab, an email chain, and that's where the pictures were. Not explicit. I want to be clear about that because I know what you're thinking. They were just photos. Selfies she'd sent him, her at a rooftop bar, her at the beach, her holding up a product sample with a thumbs up and a grin. She was pretty, of course she was pretty. She had the kind of easy, sun-blonde prettiness that looks effortless and probably isn't. And Derek had responded to every single one. You look amazing. Okay, that's genuinely a great photo. Why are you so good at everything? 3 years? We'd been together 3 years. He'd met my parents. We talked, in vague but real terms, about moving in together officially, about what our future looked like. 3 weeks ago he'd held my hand during a scary movie and kissed my temple and said, I've got you. I had believed him. I had completely, sincerely believed him. I put the laptop back exactly where it was. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning was the part that nearly broke me more than anything else. Derek woke up, stretched, wandered into the kitchen, and made coffee. He made enough for both of us without being asked. He always does that. It's one of those small habits I'd loved about him. He brought me a mug while I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing, and he kissed my forehead, and he smelled like sleep and his stupid familiar shampoo, and he said, You okay? You look tired. Didn't sleep great, I said. Want me to make eggs? Sure. He made eggs. He put on a playlist. He asked what I wanted for dinner that night, whether I was in the mood for the Thai place or maybe that new ramen spot we'd been meaning to try. And I sat there watching him move around our kitchen, our shared kitchen, with his coffee mug on the left side of the cabinet, and mine on the right, because that's just how we'd always done it. And I felt like I was watching a stranger perform the role of my boyfriend with perfect accuracy. I spent the day in a fog. I went through my work tasks on autopilot. I kept picking up my phone and putting it down. I thought about calling my best friend Dana about 6 separate times, and talked myself out of it every time because saying it out loud would make it real, and some irrational part of me was still hoping I'd misread everything. Maybe Natalie was just an overly friendly supplier. Maybe Derek was just bad at setting professional boundaries. Maybe Can't Wait to Try This With You was about the pool bar at Gabe's party, and I was constructing a betrayal out of nothing. I knew I wasn't, but I let myself pretend for one more day. The confrontation happened that night after dinner, which we'd ended up making at home, pasta, something easy. I waited until we were both sitting on the couch, TV on, and then I turned to him and I said very quietly, Who's Natalie? Derek went completely still. Not the stillness of confusion. Not who, or what do you mean? Not even the deer-in-headlights panic of someone caught completely off guard. It was the stillness of someone who had been waiting for that question and was now calculating their answer. I watched it happen in real time, and it was one of the worst things I've ever witnessed. She's a supplier contact, he said, for the side project. A supplier contact, I repeated. Yeah. Then why does your email chain with her look nothing like a supplier relationship? He looked at me for a long moment, then he put down the remote and said, You went through my laptop. It was open. You still went through it. Derek, my voice came out steadier than I felt. I saw the messages, I saw the photos, I saw you telling her she looks amazing and that she's good at everything, so I need you to explain to me what's actually going on. What followed was one of the most exhausting conversations of my life, and I've had some bad ones. He didn't deny it exactly, but he didn't confess cleanly either. He kept using this language that seemed specifically designed to make the thing he'd done sound like something that had simply happened to him, like weather. He said it had developed gradually. He said he hadn't planned it. He said, and this is the phrase I cannot get out of my head, that it had been emotional overlap. Emotional overlap, I said. It's not like it was physical. You were sending a woman you met online a floating pool bar, and telling her you can't wait to use it with her. That was for the party. The shipping address is in Scottsdale, Derek. Silence. She lives in Scottsdale, I said, not a question anymore. You were going to see her. He didn't answer, which was an answer. I'd like to say I screamed, or cried, or threw something dramatically. That's what happens in movies. What actually happened is that I felt a very strange calm settle over me, the kind that I've since learned is just your nervous system hitting a limit and going quiet. I stood up. I told him I needed some space to think. I went into the bedroom and I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and I just breathed for a while. He knocked on the door about 20 minutes later. I let him in because I didn't know what else to do. And here's where things escalated, because Derek, when he's cornered, has a way of flipping the script that I had seen glimpses of before but never in full force. He sat down and he said, I need you to understand that part of why this happened is that I felt really disconnected from you lately. I stared at him. You're always busy with work, he continued. You don't ask about the side project anymore. I feel like you stopped being interested in the things I care about. You're saying this is my fault. I'm not saying that, I'm saying there were reasons. There are always reasons, Derek. That doesn't make it okay. I never said it was okay. I said there were reasons. There's a difference. We went in circles for over an hour. I kept trying to get him to say, cleanly and without qualification, that what he'd done was wrong. He kept offering these partial acknowledgments wrapped in contextualization that always somehow looped back to something I had or hadn't done. It was maddening. At one point he said, with genuine frustration, You're so focused on being the victim here that you can't even have a real conversation. I think that might have been the moment I understood, clearly and without ambiguity, that this relationship was over. Not because of Natalie, not even because of the betrayal itself, but because of who Derek became when he was held accountable for something. The man who made me coffee and kissed my forehead had evaporated, and in his place was someone who was going to protect himself at any cost, including at the cost of my reality. I asked him to sleep on the couch. The next morning, I called Dana. I told her everything, the laptop, the pool bar, Natalie, the conversation, the emotional overlap, all of it. Dana is the kind of friend who listens completely before she responds, which is a rarer quality than it sounds, and when I finished she was quiet for a second and then she said, Okay, so what do you need right now? That's when I started crying, not the restrained kind. The ugly, full-body kind that you can't really plan for. I cried for about 10 minutes while Dana stayed on the phone and didn't try to fill the silence with anything unhelpful. Then she asked if I wanted her to come over. I said yes. She was there within the hour. Derek had gone to work, the audacity of a normal Tuesday, and Dana and I sat on my couch, and I told her everything a second time more slowly, and she helped me think through what I actually wanted. Not what I was supposed to want, not what would make the best story or the most morally coherent decision, but what I actually wanted. What I wanted was to not feel insane. Because a strange thing had happened over those last 18 hours, I had started to doubt myself. Derek's certainty, his absolute, unruffled confidence that I was overreacting, that this was complicated, that I was too focused on being the victim, had gotten under my skin in ways I didn't want to admit. He'd said it so many times in so many ways that I'd started trying the idea on. Was I overreacting? Was emotional overlap a real thing that reasonable people recognized as different from cheating? Was the physical-emotional distinction actually meaningful? Dana shut that down quickly. He was sending a woman a gift and planning to meet her, she said. None of the rest of it matters. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things, and I was still very much in the feeling part. Here's the part where I apparently become the bad guy, at least according to Derek's people. After Dana left, I did something I've gone back and forth on 100 times since. I reached out to Gabe's girlfriend, Claire, because she'd been involved in planning the pool party, and I wanted to know if she knew anything, if any of this had been visible to anyone else, if I was somehow the last to know. I wasn't trying to start anything. I genuinely just wanted information. Claire, it turned out, knew exactly who Natalie was. She'd heard Derek mention her. She thought they were just business contacts. But she also said, carefully, that she'd noticed Derek had been pretty distracted over the last few months, and that Gabe had mentioned something offhand about Derek having a lot going on. She wasn't confirming anything explosive, but she wasn't denying that there had been signs. That conversation got back to Derek within about 3 hours. He called me furious, not the quiet, controlled frustration from the night before, actual fury. He said I had gone behind his back and involved people who had nothing to do with this, and made him look terrible in front of his friends. He said I was trying to humiliate him. He said, and I'm quoting directly here because I wrote it down, "This is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about when I said you make everything about you." I hung up. His mother called the next day. She said she'd heard I was spreading rumors, and that I was clearly struggling with trust issues, and that Derek was a good man who made a small mistake. She said she hoped I would reflect on my role in the situation. She said, gently, in the tone of someone who believes they are being very reasonable, that she hoped I understood that sometimes men need to feel appreciated, and that relationships took work from both sides. I thanked her for calling and got off the phone, and then sat on my bathroom floor for a while. Marcus, Derek's best friend, texted me 2 days later. He said he wasn't taking sides, he was taking sides, but that he wanted me to know that going through Derek's laptop was a serious violation of privacy, and that Derek was genuinely hurt by what I'd done. He said that 2 wrongs don't make a right, and that he hoped we could both take some accountability. Here's the thing about all of these responses that I keep turning over in my mind. None of them were wrong, exactly. Derek's mom wasn't wrong that relationships take work from both sides. Marcus wasn't wrong that going through someone's laptop, even an open one, raises questions about trust and boundaries. Claire wasn't obligated to keep our conversation private. These things can all be true. And also, Derek had been building an emotional relationship with another woman for what looked like months, had purchased her a gift, and had been planning to meet her. Those things can also all be true. Both versions of the story can exist at the same time, and what I've been trying to figure out, what I'm still trying to figure out, is whether the coexistence of those two truths means I owe anyone anything. I didn't go back to him. That part I'm clear on. I packed a bag and went to stay with Dana for a few days, and when I came back, Derek had taken some of his things and left a note on the kitchen table that said he was staying with Marcus, and that he hoped we could talk when things calmed down. I haven't responded to the note. I don't know if I will. The pool party happened last Saturday without me. I know because Gabe texted to say he was sorry things were rough and he hoped I was okay. It was kind. I appreciated it more than I expected to. I don't know if Natalie was there. I've decided I don't want to know. What I keep coming back to is not the betrayal itself, as enormous as that is. It's the morning after. It's the coffee and the eggs and the forehead kiss and the question about dinner. It's the absolute normalcy of it. I think about how many other mornings there must have been like that, mornings when he knew exactly what he was doing and came into the kitchen and made coffee for 2 anyway. I think about how long a person can sustain that kind of compartmentalization, and I think about what it says about how much of what I thought we had was real. People keep asking me how I'm doing. I say okay because it's the easiest answer and also because I genuinely don't know yet. Some hours I feel clear and decided. Some hours I sit down to eat and realize I've been staring at the wall for 20 minutes. Dana says this is normal. My therapist, I made an appointment last week, which felt both overdue and very adult, says I'm processing, which is apparently something that takes time and cannot be rushed. The thing I keep snagging on, the thing I haven't been able to fully let go of, is whether calling Claire was the right move. Not because I think I was wrong about Derek, I don't, but because it set off the secondary explosion. It brought in his mother and Marcus, and the whole defensive apparatus of someone who suddenly needs people on his side. It made a private betrayal into something with witnesses and phone calls and sides. And I keep wondering if I would have handled it differently if I'd been thinking more clearly, or if thinking clearly was even possible at that point. I don't know, I honestly don't know. What I know is that I found out my boyfriend of 3 years was emotionally involved with another woman, had been for months, had bought her gifts, had been planning to see her, because his laptop was open on the couch, and I happened to be the one who walked by. I know that when I confronted him, he made it about me, and when I sought information, he made it about my behavior, and when his family called, they made it about my trust issues. I know that in almost every version of this story that Derek and his people tell, I'm the problem. And I know that I still have his coffee mug on the left side of the cabinet, because I haven't been able to make myself move it yet. So I guess that's everything. I'm 28 years old, I'm staying in the apartment I love in the city I chose, I'm going to therapy, and I have a best friend who showed up within the hour when I needed her. Things could be worse. Things are, in fact, worse for other people every day. But I'm sitting here replaying the confrontation, the phone calls, talking to Claire, packing my bag, all of it, and I can't quite shake the feeling that somewhere in the sequence of things I did, there might have been a choice that reasonable people would call wrong. Was I wrong to go through the open laptop? Was I wrong to reach out to Claire? Was I wrong to walk away without giving him the chance to fully explain himself? I really don't know anymore. So, am I the asshole for how I handled finding out my boyfriend was emotionally cheating on me?